What are you going to do?
To fill the hydrants. I would fill them up personally, you know that.
Hi, I'm Andy.
And I'm Roger.
And welcome to The Middle,
where we try to have thoughtful conversations
about awkward topics
on our search to find the middle.
We're going to give you last week's news today.
That's a slogan we should put on a t-shirt.
Stop touching her!
I am tonight announcing my candidacy.
Taylor Swift.
Look, my biggest issue with marriage is that I think that it's a fundamentally flawed institution that is built on the oppression of women.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny.
Having truly rational conversations about controversial issues is risky these days.
Roger.
Andy.
How's it going?
Oh, yeah, you know.
Give me a story. Give me your best story. You always have a good story.
Well, it was funny actually. I went out the other day actually, and I don't go out that often nowadays with the kids, but we're out in a pub out in town, and for some reason I was actually waiting for a few people, and I found myself at a pub pretty much like people watching, and all the tables around me were on dates. But they were like very, very different dating. So on my left, if I can paint you a bit of a picture of where I was in the bar, there was an older couple, right? So there was like maybe I would hazard a guess in their late 50s, right? And there was a guy and a dude. And then on my right, there were like Gen Zs, and they were both on dates, right? And there were just such stark differences between how they were communicating. It was really, really funny. So the older man, the older couple, and the man was there. It was just like everything you expect out of like an old kind of fat cat. He was pulling out all the moves that I think would work for that age group, where he was just like being the man, right? Like ordering the wine, like claiming like he had all this stuff, a successful business. He was like, trying to impress her by getting like all the expensive food.
Sorry to interrupt you. This was like first dates. This wasn't like old married couple.
No, yeah, both
okay.
kind of like courting, I think. Like a first date,
okay.
Possibly even maybe like an internet, like an app date or something like that,
okay.
right? For both of them.
Okay.
And so, yeah, he was just like acting like an old school big dog, right? Like ordering the most expensive wine and like talking himself up.
That's all I got. That's all I know what to do.
And so that was one side. And it was kind of working. To my ear, to our ears, it sounded like he was full of himself, right? He was just like, had tickets on himself. He was just trying to be the big dog. But maybe you are. I don't know. And then on the other side, it couldn't have been more different with the Gen Zs. Like, it was so weird. I've never actually listened to one of these first dates play out in that younger age group. And they were quite young, maybe even younger than Gen Zs, like probably early 20s, right? Like potentially even if I didn't listen long enough, I would have thought maybe they were even university students, right? But the way they were talking was just like, is this even a date? They were obviously there for a date, and they were drinking, but they were talking so casually. And I won't go through it because a lot of the conversation was really inane. But there was one line that caught my eye from the woman there, and she said pretty much,
old or young couple? This
was the young Gen Zs.
Young, okay.
And she was like, I saw this guy actually earlier in the week, and we were having this great date. We were having a nice drink. The energy was good. And so first of all, I'm like, why are you telling your current date about this?
That's
Number one.
what I was about to say.
And the guy's like, yeah, he's like interested. And then she goes, but I had to end it because you know what? At the end of that date, he wanted us to be exclusive. Can you imagine that? After one date, he wanted us to be exclusive. And the guy on there was like, oh yeah, that's crazy. What is he doing? And I was thinking to myself, what kind of crazy world is this that is somehow a turnoff to someone of that age, that actually like having a date and just saying, hey, can we go out now? Can we like not juggle 5 different partners? That is somehow a step too far. That's like beyond the pale for the dating world. Like I was just like, oh my God, this is, and just how casual they were about speaking, that they were both seeing like they had like multiple people, right? Like, and I think that really didn't shock me because I know theoretically that people on the apps, they've got, weekday numbers, they've got weekend things. But when I saw that behavior in the cold light of day, right? It wasn't day, actually, it was night, but you know what I mean? It just seems so horrible. Like this idea.
Yeah, well, it's just cheap. Like the apps like Tinder and those kind of ones, right? And I've never used it, so anyone who wants to know, they've cheapened like their the kind of the momentous occasion it is that you actually even have a date, right? So it's made to the extent that, you know, it wasn't as common a thing. They're now like a dime a dozen, right? It's almost like it's almost like going into a Toyota dealership and the Toyota salesperson saying, "Oh, do you mind if like you just don't go look at any other cars? Like just stick within the Toyota range."
Why would you need to with the performance of the Camry?
But that's kind of what it's become, right? Like it's almost of that.
It was worse than that, though, Andy.
I've just given you my business card. Like, do you mind not going anywhere else?
I'd almost be okay with that, but it was like it was worse than that. It wasn't like it was the transactional nature. It's like you said that the dynamics, like the rules of engagement, have changed so fundamentally that to me, sitting on the outside, it's just so hard to see the positive things about like the romance of it or whatever it is, right? Like the kind of connection.
But is this not like the pre-romance stage though? Is this not just because this isn't like people who already sort of know each other through like social circles or something, like who are familiar or acquainted with each other. They're not even at that point, right? This is just to get to that acquainted point, and you know, like to meet a friend of a friend. And then to say that first time you've met them, oh, do you want to go exclusive? Like maybe that's the framing of it. Like maybe it's, we've just met for the first time, literally today. We might meet again as friends, and then, you know, we'll be open to whatever I mean, we're both looking to this direction. So like, you know, we're on the same page, but like, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Look, I guess what I'm being triggered by or what I'm reacting to is just how how the world, and I wouldn't just say it's young people, I think it's everyone now that's engaged in this, but you've just lowered the stakes so much in an attempt to keep things casual and all that kind of stuff. And I think this is due to my lack of being able to comprehend that this is just the way it is now. But part of me does wonder whether this is just because it's like if you lower the stakes, then you lower the impact of rejection, you lower the impact of like trauma that you may feel from putting yourself out there. I don't know, maybe a bit of both, but...
Well, like, yeah, I mean, I guess what my hypothesis would be, and like, I don't really know, is that it's not like, it hasn't even yet got to that point, right? So it hasn't even gotten to the point of like an emotional connection or whatever. Like it's not, there's no physical intimacy or anything like that. It's just literally meeting and...
You're thinking about this one-to-one though, Andy. You're like thinking about the that kind of whether that was fair. I'm talking about the way in which they're expressing their feelings about what dating connection means is so low stakes. It's so non-committal, right? Like it's not about what happened in that interaction. It's like the agreement is saying that it's totally the norm to be having like multiple partners or multiple partners in that early stage.
But they're not partners, But they're not partners. They're just people that they know. Like a swipe. Is it swipe left, swipe right? I don't know. But whichever one it is, isn't the same thing as being in a relationship. It's just a person that you're talking to that you might meet. You might go get coffee, possibly to see if there is something there. But like, it's not. Like, that's what I think it is. Whereas I think
you're putting...
No, but hang on. If you take like the mindset that it's like a date, you know, it's like a date was in the 1950s, you know. It's not, it's different because like a date, when you say a date and you bring like a pre-internet age kind of view of what that means, that was like a big deal. That was like, it was a different thing. It was, you know, and I think that's where there's a loss in translation thing. And I say this as someone who's never had these experiences with this new world model of dating, but like, that's how I envisage that it's taking place.
And what I was going to say, Andy, is I think you're taking this to the most acceptable, like nice, sanitized version of it. But
but it can't work any other way.
But what usually happens, though, from what I understand talking to people of that generation, is it's not that they're going on 50 first dates. They're actually intimate with multiple partners at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I think some are, but then I think that's true. But like, I don't think that's... It's like with any, you know, kind of 80-20 rule type situation where there's a small number who are like that, but the rest aren't like that. And it's probably always been like that. It's just that now we have the assistance of modern technology to give more fruitful opportunities to the 20% who are like that. So
wait. You're hazarding a guess that 20% of the generation.
No, I'm just using the Pareto principle.
Because I think it's the other way around.
Oh, well, no, I don't think so.
So
I think
you're
there's
saying,
a lot.
Okay, you're saying that only 20% of that generation, Gen Zs, are like they're like a one in, one out policy for intimate relationships. They don't overlap.
I don't. I think 80%. I think 20% are like off written like rabbits, and then I think the 80% are just, it's just like, it's slow going. It's like, you meet someone, you put in the work, and then you land the prize, right? It's not like they all come like, jumping into your basket, right? Like it's the Pareto principle. It's like, there's that upper, segment of the population who have no trouble attracting partners both on male and female side, and they can take whatever they want. And then there's the rest who have to kind of figure it out amongst themselves. And like, the bottom 80% of males always still want the top 20% of the females, and vice versa, right? And that's not going to happen. So they got to figure out, how they make it happen at those other levels.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I'm not sure. I have a less rosy view at all. But anyway, that's just my view. Like I've sounded inherently judgmental in this segment, but like, you do what you want. Like I was just sitting there as an observer.
But have you thought about the other side of it, which is that like young people are having less sex than they ever have, right? Like on aggregate, like,
oh man, I don't know. Like I have heard that, but I just don't understand how that is true. Like, and whether that could be even have a modicum of like accuracy, right? Like a self-reported.
No, because it's like all the stories are around the top 20%. But what's gone on in that other 80% is...
Well, then why would it be changing if it's always the top 20% or whatever?
What do you mean?
So you're saying it's like the top 20% are promiscuous or whatever, right?
No, it's just that the top 20% have lots of opportunities, and therefore, because they don't have to try, they...
So why is the 80%
right?
becoming more sexless?
Well, for other factors. They're like playing video games, or they're, you know what I mean? Like it's these other factors going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I must admit that does make I do find that hard to kind of swallow. That this
social
idea
it's social connections, like people, like the nature of social connections are changing.
The apps are making up for that, though. Surely, like
no,
if there's like
helps.
a middle that's kind of falling prey to some kind of incel culture.
Yeah, but the technology helps like in different ways, right? And it's not, when we talk about technology, it's not just one narrow aspect. It's the totality of communication. Like there's the way that people in the school ground like communicates different. Like I just think it's different. All right, I'm just
saying I have trouble believing that I have heard it. I have heard that those studies are saying that.
But they're drinking less. They're doing things like drinking less, right? So there's something about what it is to be a young person nowadays that's changed, and the culture and the vibe. Because like particularly among young people, like it's, if I think about,
it's distorted from COVID too, man.
Yeah, but it's a trajectory, as I understand. Like it's not just anyway. Let's pivot the conversation. I sent you a clip earlier today. Now, look, we have some pretty horrific fires in California, in Los Angeles, ongoing as we are recording it. It seems it's sort of very reminiscent of what happened in Australia back in 2019-20, summer bushfires back then. So kind of like, I can imagine it brings some trauma. I do think there's some there's some elements to this which are like quite distinct and unique. So I'll let you play the clip and we can react to it.
All right.
Governor, I live here, Governor. That was my daughter's school, Governor. Please tell me what you're going to do. I'm not going to hurt him, I promise.
I'm literally talking to the president right now to specifically answer the question of what we can do for you and your daughter.
Can I hear your call? Because I don't believe it.
I'm sorry. There's literally, I've tried 5 times. That's why I'm walking around to make the call.
Why is the president not taking your call?
Because it's not going through. So
Why?
I have to get cell service.
So let's get it. Let's get it. I want to be here when you call the president.
I appreciate it. I'm doing that right now. And it's to immediately get reimbursements, individual assistance, and to help you. I'm devastated for you. I'm so sorry, especially for your daughter. I have 4 kids, losing the school.
Everyone who went to school there, they lost their homes. They lost 2 homes because they were living in one and building another. Governor, please tell me, what are you going to do with the president right now?
We're getting the resources to help rebuild.
Why was there no water in the hydrants, Governor?
That's all literally.
Is it going to be different next time?
It has to be. Has to be. Of course.
What are you going to do?
I'm doing
To fill
everything
the
I can.
hydrants. I would fill them up personally, you know that.
I literally,
I would fill up the hydrants myself. But would you do that?
I would do whatever I can.
But you're not. I see do you know there's water dripping over there, Governor? There's water coming out there. You can use it.
I appreciate it. I'm going to make the call to address everything I can right now, including making sure people
I'd
are
like
safe.
to make sure you do.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
What was your okay? So just the setup is Governor Newsom, presidential possible candidate, hopeful. Well, have his stocks crashed? This time last year, could have been the presidential candidate.
We had him in the top 2 or 3 for,
and bam! Now he's makes Scott Morrison look like a hero firefighter.
but he's still got good Californian hair though. At least he's got that.
So, what was your first reaction when I sent that and you watched that?
Look, I think it's it was a train wreck. All right, let's get that out of the way. But at the same time, let me just say that he's in an impossible situation. It's very, very hard to handle that kind of raw emotion when there's literally like fires tearing through a neighborhood. There are no answers that are really going to satisfy someone. And I think part of the problem sometimes is that if you have this image of being very good with people and like a personable, genuine person and whatever, good orator, it puts you in this position where you feel like you need to tolerate that. Like in a lot of ways, the appropriate answer is to get, to actually shut that down straight away. Like this is an emergency situation. You do not have time to answer and to indulge someone who's pushing and trying to offload some of their negative emotion on you, right? Like, what do you really think is going to happen here, lady? Like, he is the governor of California. California is burning. Do you think that he's not doing something, or he can give you an answer to help you, right? And like, I think other characters would have just been like, hey, no comments, I'm working, right? Like, fires are burning, I'm working, right? Like, this is a crisis situation.
Well, it's the presence of the news camera, like it's all
where is
filmed, right?
staff, man? Someone's got to you need Terry Linebacker just clearing this person away. There's just not, and that's what Morrison or like a Tony Abbott or someone would do. They'd just be like, hey, I'm working here. Like this is not appropriate, right? Like, and also, what is she talking about? Filling up the fire hydrants? Does she think that it opens it opens up and you pour like a kettle into this fire hydrant?
What was the? But you mentioned Scott Morrison, yeah, and how what he would have said, but he had his own moment.
I know, but that was different.
What was the line? It was like, I don't hold the hose or something. What was the? I can't remember the exact line, but it was something like
he had a string of disastrous things like
I don't hold the hose or something.
Yeah, but that was when he was being challenged about being in Hawaii, right? So that was a little bit different.
But he was in a fire affected community, and his response to an agitated
but that's what I mean. At least
local resident.
At least he gave it back, right? Like Gavin Newsom is trying to placate this woman, right? And try to be like, oh, we're doing everything we can. I'll do whatever we can. I'm trying to call the president. We're going to get you the help. It's going to be different. And it's like, what he really needs to be saying to this is like, this is a crisis situation. We're dealing with it. We're processing it. Let me work. Like, go away.
Yeah.
But it's horrible to see. It's horrible to see. And I think that, yeah. And what was your thoughts?
Okay, so I sent it to you. It's too soon. It's too soon and too raw and too current to say that this person is in the running for Karen of the Year. Like,
is that where you're going?
I just thought, like, okay, there's a couple. Okay, so there's no over the audio you probably don't pick it up, but like this is like a preppy sort of white upper. Well, I don't know, upper middle class, like probably higher than that, white woman bailing down the governor, demanding to call the president to get water in the fire hydrants. Like this is now. It's too soon. It's too raw to kind of like. This is a tone deaf sort of take, so I'm owning that. But like it just okay. So in the Australian experience, like these were regional communities, salt of the earth people. These were not rich people. These were people who were on Struggle Street that lost their homes. Right.
Yeah.
This part of Los Angeles, and now it's horrible. Like don't get me wrong, and I actually I was in Los Angeles last year and not last year, the year before now. I kind of have like a soft spot for this place and I kind of know some of the areas that they're talking about, like
Pacific Palisades.
But this is a very expensive part of not only California, but Los Angeles. Like this is expensive. Like this is the equivalent of Point Piper catching on fire and then Malcolm Turnbull coming out and complaining that the local fire service, didn't protect his shrubs out the front. Like it's now, I do want to be balanced. Like these are people who've lost everything. They've lost their homes. They've lost there's been a loss of life even. They've lost the whole community, right? Schools, everything. It's complete destruction. And in some ways you don't, there's no amount of wealth or, fortune in life that you can accrue that kind of makes it all okay. Like just, that's all right. You can just write that off. Like this is a devastating loss for these people. So I want to accept that, right? And lay that out the front, but very clear about that. But I guess what I want, maybe just like the sense of entitlement of it, right? The sense of like, no, I want to stay here. Can we call together? We'll call the president together. Let's go and do it. And are you going to put the water in the fire hydrants? Like it's just, can you imagine going down to now? Recently, we had a similar sort of natural disaster in the United States just recently, down Florida, and that's always perennially devastated that those. But they're poorer areas. They don't demand the same service. It was almost like this person was like by trade, by profession, a journalist, and they brought their own camera and like they had the skills and the tools to speak that kind of accountability to power. And
I don't know,
that's
man.
not something that others have. That's yeah.
I think it's just a sense. I think it's just a sense of entitlement. And that's why I know that's where you're going, like Karen of the Year, because if you think like this, even emotion aside, you're gonna have that sense of entitlement in all kinds of services. Like things are not going well, what are you going to do about it? I demand satisfaction, kind of thing. But look, I agree with you. I just kind of think that you just have to realize. I think the problem with these type of characters like Gavin Newsom and these kind of charm monsters or whatever. They think they can get out of these situations. They think that they can say something charming or use their warmth or whatever it is to leave the situation with their head held high. And I just don't. I think it's a mistake. Like I think that you're miscalculating the actual situation where you just need to go, hey, the world's burning. We're working. Get the fuck away from me, right? Like this is like it's not appropriate, and I think that that's a lot to do with that power dynamic as well, right? Like I'm going to stay on the phone when you call the president. Like, I mean, come on. Like, I want to be here when you talk to the president. And you know what? I'm not sure if Gavin Newsom could get through, whether he wouldn't do that. put me on speaker. It's the button. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Like, I just think that there's a time and a place for that kind of constituent diplomacy.
I think, and you kind of alluded to it before, but like the way out of this maybe public affairs problem is not to be in it in the first place. So you do not, as a highly susceptible, like someone who could be criticized on the ground by highly emotional, traumatized people in front of news cameras, you do not put yourself in that situation. And now, I don't know what the circumstances, whether he went for a photo. Like, it's maybe hard to avoid, but I think, you've got to have ways to get yourself out of that, like to prolong the exchange, to accept the exchange.
Yeah,
and
it gets to a stage where you're enabling it, right? Like,
yeah, the longer you're in that situation, it's only going to be bad for you. So,
but my argument, it comes out of pride. He thinks he can get out of it, right? Like he thinks that he can turn it around or whatever it is, right? He's like charming enough to make it work.
Yeah. Well, I think, these people get to where they are because they're very good public affairs they've got a mastery of it, right? So they're, I think I'd probably give him enough credit to say that, you don't become governor of California without sort of knowing what you're doing. He's definitely a charm, and this is like the US political system kind of rewards like charming, kind of confident, sort of suave sort of people, right? Like the guy on the date that you were talking about. This is what the system rewards. And I think in our system, I think our system rewards maybe slightly different things. It rewards like frankness. I think it rewards people who will, be happy to kind of offend someone on the ground, like right in front of you, off the back of the fact that, the other million people watching it on TV, like 80% of them agree with you, that kind of thing. And there's like a respect for that sort of confident exchange, but I think in the US political system they don't have a culture of doing that. It's just maybe Trump is you're a Trump fanboy, like that's the maybe that's the breath of fresh air that he's offered.
What do you think Trump would say? Go on, give me what you think he'd say.
Well, Trump would just be like, I told them that they needed to. I'm not going to do his voice, but I told you they should have built more nuclear power plants. That would have, we would have.
Well, Trump does actually have an answer to this.
Well, we should. I told you we should have turned the lakes.
Kill the fucking frog.
Kill the frogs. Yeah.
Stop dumping fresh water into the ocean.
Some shitty fish, that they wanted to say. No, but I think that's he wouldn't.
You're so right that he would have blamed someone else.
That. But he would. Well, for one, he would have said, "Oh no, that Biden, he's shit. He hasn't come. He hasn't answered the call." Anyway,
but yeah, I mean, come on. Like the reason this is going to be damaging at the end of the day is because he's kind of being walked over. He didn't have the kind of judgment to cut it off, and it's quite a long exchange. That's why it's so painful. Like, it's a long exchange.
Yeah, I don't know that he would have seen it as a successful outcome if he had have cut it off, though. I think that's the thing. Like, I think he would have seen it as a missed opportunity, and maybe he failed. But like, I actually, you know what? Like, I don't think he looks silly. I think she looks silly, like of the two. But like, nonetheless, I don't think he necessarily wins anything out of it. But
it's damaging, man. It's like, I know she comes in hot and heavy, but it's damaging.
I think though that he would have gone into that if let's say he would have seen that as like a tennis match, right? And said, well, look, I might not win the tennis match, but if I win it, this is the prize I'll get. Like, I'll get to the next round of Wimbledon, right? Sort of thing. But if I don't enter Wimbledon, I'll never know, right? So I think he went in, he had a crack. He would have thought, look, this is going to be my moment, or just not necessarily the defining moment, but a moment where he can demonstrate that he's empathetic, that he gets it, he gets the frustration, that he's on the ground doing things. And I think he was probably like triggered, or there was like a lightning rod for him where like the synapses sort of came alive, because she said, oh, why haven't you contacted the president or whatever? And he said, oh, well, look, I'm calling him right now, like when he probably literally was, perhaps. And that just,
but even though,
I've got such a good answer to her question.
Why would you even say that? See? I'm calling the president. Like, come on.
But for him, it was just like, it's like when someone comes up to you and says, why haven't you done that thing? Well, see, look, I'm actually doing it right now. Do you want to have a look at my laptop? So like, it's that kind of, see, look, you thought I was shit, but actually I'm on top of it kind of thing.
Anyway, look, it's very easy to sit here and kind of analyze the performance. In reality, dealing with someone who's emotional, entitled, and quite aggressive with camera would be very tough. It's his job. But yeah, I think I think his stocks go down, unfortunately. And one, from the bit that I'm talking about, with the judgment to cut it off and be stronger and deal with the situation. And the second, because he's already have all these allegations against him that he somehow is responsible for the mismanagement, right? And that's the main thing, right? So this is kind of also making it seem an added little pin around the incompetence, right?
The list of things that led to the devastation will be 99.9% of his political future being tarnished, and moments like these will be the 0.01%. Like, it will be the the reckoning of of what happened and what should have happened. All right, let's shift gears to today's substantive episode topic, if you would believe that wasn't it.
Okay, so I'm kind of drawing from a bit of my experiences when I was out as well. So, right, so like one thing that I thought that would be really good for us to talk about is this kind of concept of how we connect with people, right? And I've always had this kind of feeling around that there are some people that it comes very naturally. And when I say connection, it can be across a lot of different things, right? It could be you just go out with a group of colleagues, some friends, even some acquaintances, and everyone's vibing, but perhaps you may struggle to kind of enter that energy. It could be through relationships. It could be through family and friends as well. But I think there's something there that when I look at some of the challenges that I'm seeing in modern life, I think connection and disconnection is really at the heart of a lot of these things. like this, what we were talking about before about men and women being lonely or having less interaction, less sex, whatever it is, right? Like I think that there is this curse of modernity, which is around isolation, disconnection, and loneliness, right? So I wouldn't mind we'll have a bit of a conversation around that. And I want to start off with a bit of just an open question about you personally. Talk to me about, on a scale of, introversion and extroversion, looking back at like your social interactions, how would you characterize yourself?
I'm definitely, I would say I'm an introvert, right? Like, so, and I think I would use like, I don't know what the technical definition or diagnosis of it would be, but like, to me, it's, do you become energized by talking and meeting and engaging with people and meeting new people or whatever? Like, does that give you energy? And it doesn't. It tends to drain me, right? I tend to, but then I think, well, actually, the people I know who I think are really good at that all self-describe themselves as introverts as well. So I sort of, well, yeah, I mean, like,
it's like a humble thing, though.
I don't know what it is, but like, I think there's genuinely like people who just, I don't know, maybe part of that part of the brain that makes them sort of makes it tiring for them is turned off or something. I think there probably are people like that. But then I think being an introvert doesn't mean you can't be really outgoing and good at that stuff. And in the right setting, I can be too. Like, so describing myself as an introvert doesn't mean that I can't like put my game face on and get through a situation, through a situation or whatever, right? So, and sometimes I would enjoy that situation. Like, so it depends on like the mode you're in. But like, if I had, like, I tell you, like the most dreaded experience for me, like if I had to think of like what would be one of the more least enjoyable experiences, it would be like networking sessions, like going to like introduce yourself and meet people who you don't know and find out about what they do and tell them about you. That's that's got to be one of the most exhausting, tiring.
You're describing dating.
Yeah, I mean that's maybe, but like, maybe that's why they're not exclusive.
Look, it's interesting, right? Like, I think that your definition of introversion and extroversion is still, because I had a quick look up earlier today just to make sure that, the definitions, the psychological definitions hadn't changed. And it still is that. It's about where you gain energy from. So whether you feel energized from being with people or not, right? So that's still the general yardstick. Because I kind of almost thought that it was like a flawed concept by now, but that's kind of where it stayed.
Can I just add though one thing to it is that the reason I think it's problematic is that it changes. Like sometimes I do feel energized by being with other people, and then sometimes I feel really, really weighed down by being with other people, and sometimes it's meeting new people that weighs me down. Sometimes that's the bit that energizes me. Sometimes it's hanging out with people I know and I'm comfortable with. Sometimes that's what drains me. Like I have these different ebbs and flows. Like, and I'll be keen to get to this later. I'll stop interrupting you. But like one of the most exciting moments, or some of the most exciting moments in my life, are where I have these rapid periods of like meeting new people. So I just can't. While I think like on net and on balance for me, I'm more introvert than extrovert, but it fluctuates. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah. No, I think it is hard. I've always struggled with the concept for me, right? Because I would definitely fall on the introversion scale. But at the same time, I see it like I think there are a lot of myths about being an introvert that I think that people lay upon you, right, around these labels. And one of them is that you would prefer not to spend time with people, right? Like I think that is a big misconception, that you don't feel, as an introvert or whatever, you don't feel loneliness. Like you don't have a desire to interact with people. And that's just, not categorically like false, right? And I think that when I reflect on my own behavior, I hate small talk with just random people, or trying to just placate or have acquaintance, like a large group of acquaintances. I want to get to that deeper conversation with someone that I really connect with. But as a result, like a lot of those connections go in the bin kind of thing for me. So I feel like I have classic extroverted traits when I'm with people that I'm comfortable with, because I've connected with them, or I feel like they're they're on my level or whatever it is, right? So I think that, like you, it's not a very useful element rather than the stereotype of someone who is just full of like energy, hopping around a room, kind of like quipping and having all the stereotypical like charming, witty kind of behavior, right?
But charming and witty behavior and funny quips are not dimensions of the introvert extrovert paradigm, right? Like they're just charming and wit, you know.
But that's what people think when they say someone's really extroverted. They're usually quite loud in social situations. They're energizing. They're kind of like life of the party. Like it doesn't have to be. That's the stereotype,
yeah.
right?
But that's what I mean. Like some of those people would describe themselves as introverts, right?
Yeah.
So they might be able to do that, but then they'll go and say, "Oh, yeah, but I'm actually an introvert."
Yeah. But so for me, it's more about being like comfortable with someone, right? It's like, and I have experienced that. So if I take my own views on this, I've often felt a lot of disconnection and isolation in group settings because I just don't feel. I feel like it's very okay. If I had to describe it as a feeling, the best way to do this for you, and see if you resonate to this or not, maybe I'll be in like a group situation, and someone's talking, and they'll make a joke or whatever, and I'll think to myself like, oh, that was like a really unfunny joke or just normal. There's no reaction from me, and I look around, and the whole group is like in laughter, and they're like laughing, and the energy's going, and it like I'm unmoved. And so that is a regular occurrence for me, especially growing up. And I just kind of felt it was a very othering kind of feeling where it's like, why is this enjoyment or this laughter or whatever it is coming so easy to people, right? But I feel like I don't have a ticket to play. So I felt very kind of like, well, I can't find someone on my level or I'm isolated from that kind of group experience. And I think that's a common thing of like people who say that they just feel like, why does it come so easy to other people to have the small talk, to be engaged in the joke, to kind of feel included as part of the group? And I can't, like, I don't, there's nothing there for me. And it's not that I don't want it. Like I do want it. I want to be part of the group. I want to be included. I want to find someone that I can call a friend, but it just doesn't seem available to me.
I think that probably, I relate to that probably a bit less. For me, it's less about like, how do I react or engage with someone? Like I would just in that situation just think the person's not funny.
No, look,
but like
Andy, I definitely do. But it's more, but like, why don't you find it funny?
There'd be two dimensions, like, and I think it depends on whether I know them or not. So if I don't know them and they're like, and I have to have the small talk, or I have to kind of figure out, like, I have to consciously think about what the conversation is. To me, there might be like a mixture of like anxiety to that, like almost like a sense of, I've got to like be a bit performative here. So like I've got to make sure like I land this conversation without looking stupid or silly or whatever. So that can bring in a sense of anxiety which is quite like exhausting. So that's if it's someone I don't know. And depending on the situation, that can be higher or lower. Then there's like, for people I do know, it's probably less about anxiety, but more just like, do I have enough capacity for this conversation right now? Like, do I right now in the moment that we're in, have I recharged enough to be talking to this other person? So this would be one where I actually want to be on my own, just being within myself. Like I don't want to be with another person right now. I might be forced to be with that other person, either because it's a prearranged social thing, or maybe it's just maybe it's someone you know in the workplace who right now you just want to have your headphones in and listen to something and just be in your own world, but you kind of can't because it's rude and you're with another person, and just so you do that instead. Like so it's like an energy thing, right? When you're low energy and you can't sort of, you haven't recovered enough to, have that social interaction. So that would be how it lands for me. It's less about, like, I would think I wouldn't say I'm not gelling with someone. I wouldn't sort of say it's me, it's me, not you. I'd say, no, it's you. Like,
yeah, but like, I mean, some of that energy stuff I do relate, but it's not as if low energy, like you said, it's not as if low energy causes that disconnection, because you can't kind of find it, right? Like it's not always an energy thing. It's just like a compatibility thing, square peg, round hole. Like I think that feeling of not fitting in is much deeper than that.
Yeah, but I think that's about finding your people, right? Like if you know,
What if there are not many of them?
If the Dungeons and Dragons kids go and hang out with the jocks, they're probably not going to get on with each other, but they find their crew and they have a great time. It's just because isn't that interesting? Like in some ways, like talking, like let's just use the Dungeons and Dragons and jocks sort of paradigm. Like there's this sense that like someone who's into Dungeons and Dragons, very nerdy type, oh, they must be introverted. They must be like, because they don't want to talk to me about football and stuff like that, right? They must be like nerdy bookworms. But you get them in a room together and start playing with their mates in that world, then suddenly they come out of their shell and they're a completely different beast, right? And yeah, so it's like, it's just finding your people, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. But I guess, look, maybe it is a gendered thing as well with men. But I think that like it's changing now. But I do think that kind of like the level of conversation is a bit harder to get something a little bit more meaningful. Or if you're someone who, how do I put this? If you're someone who enjoys the pursuit of like deep thinking or whatever, or maybe deep's the wrong word, but you know what I mean, pontification or whatever, it can be a little bit lonely out there at times. I think it's harder to kind of build up to that and find that those kind of avenues.
Well, that's why I've got all my friends on my podcast app. I want to take this a slightly different direction and ask you a hypothetical or like a thought experiment question. So picture in your mind two men, friends from, way back or whatever. They haven't seen each other for a few years or whatever. And they're both sort of, happy-go-lucky kind of guys. Maybe someone's been living overseas or something like that. They reconnect and they say, all right, let's go out. Let's have a good time, catch up. What are they doing? Tell me what's the activity that they're doing?
Well, if they're our age, they're probably having a drink.
Okay. So like alcohol. So I think the social fabric is so influenced by alcohol, particularly when it comes to, we've had a conversation about like introversion, extroversion. I think the power of alcohol and why so many people are like attracted to it in social settings is that it flips that part of the brain where it drains your energy when you socialize with someone, and it flips it and it makes you energized by socializing with someone. And that goes for both finding unfunny jokes funny, that goes for not feeling any sense of anxiety when meeting someone. That makes you think that you're funnier than you really are, so you're less self-conscious. It makes you think you're smarter and more, I was about to say effluent, but what's the word?
Fluent.
Fluent. It makes your verbal fluency much to your mind, more articulate. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like
cocaine does all that too, though.
It's quite a powerful, lubricant for social exchanges. And I've got to be honest, like I would say it's probably the primary reason why I enjoy drinking, because even if I'm not out socializing, even in a home setting, it makes me almost feel like I'm more entertained, like I can enjoy things more. Like I can, I can enjoy these communal experiences more. Like how do you feel about that?
Have a slight buzz to deal with your family?
I just think it has this effect which is powerful. I think in some ways is actually really bad because like the connection or the like association of like socializing with alcohol, like, and it's not like it's everyone, it's a universal thing. Like it's not just me. Like this is every social setting seems to be like, let's get a bottle of wine.
It's very different. I think it depends what the goalposts are, right? Like if you're talking about connection through deep conversation versus romantic connection versus, just comedic stuff, like it's all very different, right? And I think that alcohol has a sweet spot for the former and not so much for the latter. So I agree with you that it is a social lubricant and it gets the party started. I think it says something less flattering about being inside your own head, inside your own mind. I think that the kind of inhibitions that you have and some of the hardwiring to protect you in a social setting, it doesn't cast an amazing light on that. But yeah, no, I agree that I think that and that's why they always say it's the quiet ones you got to watch out for whenever you go out drinking, because when you take away some of those inhibitions or those kind of like the closeness of them, how closed off they are, that tends to change things, right? It tends to give them the ticket to ride. Now, I haven't experienced so much of like the drinking at home bringing me out of my shell, and I think that that's mainly because I have that much more with people that aren't in my inner circle. Like I don't need when I'm drinking with people in my inner circle or my family or whatever, it's a different thing for me. It's not to loosen or round out my edges to let me participate. And I kind of use it. I don't really use it for that style of thing. I do think that feeling a little bit numb, getting out of your head and more into your body is probably what it does for me. So that, it desensitizes you to a lot of things, right? Like I can't tell you the amount of times where I've had like niggles and things like that in my body, and I'm thinking about them and I'm like angry about them, whatever. And then you have a couple of drinks and then everything just goes away. Everything's suspended. Your worries are suspended for whatever that 3-4 hour period is. And that feels really freeing, like to be unburdened for a little while. Right?
I enjoy, I have this thing where I enjoy music more. Like, I already enjoy music, but I enjoy it even more.
Have you been able to pinpoint what it is? Because I do too. I do too. And I think for me, what it is about music is like a sweet spot, because I don't love being drunk and watching movies. I think that's a really bad experience. It's too overwhelming. But music is a sweet spot because you just kind of like, it's almost like reverb for your brain. You just swim. You're like swimming in the wall of sound, especially if you're listening to something a little bit more how like stoners feel when they listen to Pink Floyd or something. But you kind of feel more in the music. It just like washes over you more, and you feel immersed in the sound. And there's like I think it's the lag. It's like the auditory perceptual lag that you have kind of makes things like feel more 3D, more kind of immersive for me.
I think I get into the like discovery mode when I'm, like where it's like, I want to, and now we've got so much at our fingertips that like I want to listen to a different version of this thing, like a cover version of a song, or I want to watch the live version of it or something, and it's probably not a mode where I'll go and like listen to like greenfield music I've never listened to before. To discover music is probably not the best, and maybe that's why you said like watching a movie isn't good, because like discovery is, but re-immersing yourself in stuff that you already and actually rediscovering long lost music that you used to like. That's where it really hits me. And like, I wish there was a non-toxic way of getting that experience.
Yeah, or holding. Like, have you ever thought it'd be amazing to like hold your blood alcohol at like a very, very particular level, or whatever it is, right? Like it just like stays there. It doesn't actually go out of the pocket. It stays in the zone. I know you should be able to
blood, like an injector, like something like what diabetics have,
tablet, slow release,
just
tablet.
like a permanent, So like, okay, talking about connections and quantums, I mean, like I've sort of revealed, like, and I think this, when you have kids and family and life kind of gets in the way, not just your own responsibilities, but the responsibilities of your peers and the people who you would be going out, hanging out with and go to the pub or whatever. That does like tend to destroy like a lot of the social connections that we either once had or that we might have previously like rebuilt or reestablished. Like I think this theme or this concept of like it getting harder to establish good connections, and maybe like, and for me it's not all about like the deep and meaningful, like really good strong relationships or whatever, but it's also it is like having a group that you can go out with, like, which when you're young you have like a dime a dozen like people to go out with, but when you were, I'm just sort of reflecting on the fact that like just randomly I was invited to buy tickets to go and see Green Day, which is not I don't really particularly enjoy Green Day, if I'm honest.
I've never heard you talk about Green Day ever.
It's just not, they're not a band that I'm that into, but anyway, I bought tickets to them, and I'm going with some people that I haven't seen for years, like literally years. And that's going to be really fun. And but like, I don't think, I might be totally wrong, but I don't think anyone in that circle, even though haven't seen them for years, I don't know that they're like regularly catching up either. Like they're more regularly than not years, but like I don't think it's like a weekly thing. You know what I mean? or even probably a monthly thing. And that's quite, I might be wrong on that. I'll find out. And then you think, well, okay, these are people that you maybe once had that you've moved on, for various reasons, you've connected with different people or different stage in your life. You're nowhere near each other anymore, and, all these other barriers. But then, like, when you think about where do you replace these people, like who are they going to come from? Okay, we're so immersed in our work and our workplace, and that's, I think maybe 10, 20 years ago, that was like a good place to also make friends and hang out with people. But I think modern workplaces are so stiff, and it's not even, that's like disappearing now. Like the ability to have like a safe, I'm going to say a safe space. I'm going to own that kind of language.
Shame on you.
To have a safe space with colleagues where you can be yourself has dissipated precisely because of all this safe space shit, that you can't say anything. You can't be yourself in case someone will take offense at it. Like, so workplaces are now these like, everyone gets wrapped up in cotton wool that you can't really connect with people because you might say the wrong thing, or you might offend them, or they might be, they might not like some aspect of, and I just think that's really sad. And I don't think, by the way, all workplaces are like that, but I think that's the trajectory. Like, I think the modern HR department and the modern, maybe it's changing, but yeah, I think it's really unfortunate because that's all we're left with. Literally, it's the workplace.
I'll probably kind of getting to this apex here where it's about like, let's describe one of the most common things that that men feel, right? Or people feel as they grow older. So I guess one of the most common, like getting back to it, connections, right? One of the most common experiences, and especially for men, is this idea of like life is a steady decline as you age into having less and less friends that you can call on, until you like wake up one day and you just go, hey, like actually I don't have any friends anymore. Or maybe I don't have a group of friends anymore, right? And you're left with this kind of mountain to climb that, okay, if I do want to change that, which most people do, it's overwhelming because like, how do I somehow go on these mandates to try to find friends one at a time and then piece them into a group or whatever? And it just becomes a bit of an ordeal. And
don't go exclusive.
Yeah, it's this compounding effect too of your responsibilities are so heavy in that building phase of your life, in your 30s and 40s or whatever, late 20s, 30s, 40s, that you're so time poor anyway, and all of your energy becomes like inward into your family. And I guess the question is more just, is that just a natural course of it for people? Does that really matter in your opinion? Like, how many friends do you need? And is it something that you're striving for because of like the image of it? Or like you said, oh, it's so sad, but really deep down, actually, you do want to be selfish. You do want just your own time. You want your own things your way under your control. Like, and that's a bit that I've been grappling with around like, is that feeling of like, oh, I feel like I'm not investing enough in friendships. And then other times as well, is this a natural building stage of life? And I would extend that to communities as well. They always say like it takes a village, right? But no one wants to invest in the village. I think when push comes to shove, everyone is so insular, they're so selfish that they will prioritize their own convenience over that of the community in the village, right?
It's not the natural progression. Like, I think it's just the way our modern society is kind of like structured to set us up to fail. Like, so, and it depends on which like point in history you go back. Like, if you go back 50 years ago, you'd have various structures, like certainly religion, even to be honest, probably like the differences in the roles of men and women. You'd have mateship kind of have a space that is separated from women, and that would have been all very sexist, of course, but like it did probably have, or maybe positive externalities, if you like, positive consequences in some ways. Also, probably many negative ones. But
do you feel that your parents had more friends as a result of the changing structure?
I think they were in the transition. I don't think they necessarily had the full, dividends. I think if you're like say on religion, like if you're going to a church, like, or a religious, whatever you belong to, like, and you're part of a religious community, I think that's almost like a microcosm of like a little mini world. And I think you probably have people who hate each other. You probably have people who get on, don't get on, and all that sort of stuff. But like, at least you have this extra world that you can hang out with. I think workplaces would have been more genuine, like fertile, places to make friends. Whereas now it's like, oh, you don't want to be mixed work and pleasure because that could be dangerous, for your career or something. Which is really sad. And I think, I think it's, then there would have also been like geographically, we would have lived in smaller cities, smaller towns. It can literally take you 2 hours to get from one side of Sydney to the other, much less when you're talking about with public transport. So it does like split people up. And then, if you go back like 1,000 years, like which brings you into completely different dynamics, you would have had, it would have been more like the village bringing up, there were like families would have been different and stuff like that.
Like a main street and stuff. But do you think it's a problem though? Like I kind of get all that structure has kind of pushed us that way, right?
I think it is a problem because I don't think it's healthy. Like I don't think, if we talk about like mental health and we talk about if we have certain things that, I don't know what the cause of, there's the Jonathan Haidt that we looked at last year and that's doing the rounds, and there's all these social media kind of links with depression and mental illness and all that sort of stuff. I don't know what the actual causal instrumental relationship between A and B is, but even so, just like it is, I think as far as I'm aware, it's not a controversial thing to say that people who have a lot of good, deep, meaningful relationships with other people live better lives, like across a bunch of different dimensions. So I do think it's a problem. I don't think it's a problem that we're not all like super sort of social butterflies. Like I think that's in some ways like I'm more skeptical of like someone who's like got 100 friends than I am someone who has one friend. Like, I think the person who says they've got 100 friends probably has fewer friends than the person who says they have one friend. So I think there's a bit of like superficiality that can happen, but I think in terms of like put family to one side, which is where I think we can get a lot of the really deep relationships and connections, but like beyond that, like I think it is good to, especially when you're retired and you're not forced to mingle with other people every day, like to put the effort in.
I want to finish on one element, and it goes back to what you said earlier in the session about people, younger people having less sex or whatever it is, and it's all linked. All the data's pointing this way that we're becoming more isolated. People are choosing traditional marriages less. They're having less kids. Replacements going down, and actually we've petered out. I mean, isn't that a crazy thought? If it's true, I don't know, that we are now living at the highest point of civilized populations, right? Like, wouldn't that be crazy? Like, I wouldn't believe it.
Well, we're close to population peaking. I mean, it is expected to happen. So
I know, but isn't that like that's crazy to me because I always thought of it. We keep expanding as a race, right? And I think this idea, right? Like, so what I'm getting to is this idea of these stats that we both have kids, and this idea that more and more a larger percentage of the population are going to be single, and how do you process that? Like, how do you kind of, is that, it's hard not to see that from our vantage point as some kind of like failure or deficiency, but maybe it's like a lack of our imagination around what it's going to mean to be a human, in the next 50 years.
Well, first thing is, okay, everyone looking down their screens on their phones, not talking to each other, just engaging with TikTok or whatever. The other one's a little bit weirder, which I don't think I'm guilty of, but I could imagine how it might be like a step that like I could become guilty of, where people have the noise cancelling earbuds in while they're with other people socializing. So it's not like, you're commuting, so you're not talking to other people, you're just listening to something. I presume they've got their earbuds in and then they turn off.
It's like on transparency mode or whatever.
Like I'm gonna assume it's that, but like they could just be like, like there's usually like younger people, so I wouldn't put it past them if they're
it's like
listening to something while they
Sam Bankman-Fried like playing.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I think they're listening to music or something. They're usually young, just like as a really bizarre.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a tech aspect.
I think this to me like it's. I want to like sort of thought back to like the moments where I've been most like I've enjoyed, like, because we've been talking about introversion, extroversion, and sort of connecting with people or whatever. and you mentioned like the finding people funny or whatever, or not finding them funny or entertaining to be around. Like the moments in my life when I've been most, like where I've met the most people in the shortest amount of time and really enjoyed it and really it's been great. It's usually when I'm overseas. Like it's usually when I'm, you know, like when I spend time living overseas, or even just like when I was younger and I used to travel and stay in hostels, and every hostel you meet like a completely new different group of people, like, and literally every 3 days you're meeting 20 new people that you go out with and hang out with, and they're your mates and you stay in touch or whatever until like 3 days later you go to a new place and you meet new people. Like, and that's fun and it's really exciting, and it's like, why has that gone? Like, why don't I have that anymore? Like, and I think it's the real world. It's like, I'm not going to do that in the workplace because, like, yeah, there's too many traps. There's too many, like, I can get disappointed by the experience, or I can make a mistake, or I can enter some trap. And fuck, I hate people who make traps for you. Like, that's just, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I guess going back to the whole population thing and people staying single, have you ever met what is traditionally defined as like an incel?
Have I met?
Yeah, have you come into
incel?
Contact with someone that is like part of that incel?
Who would describe themselves as an incel?
Well, I don't think they come out and show you the badge or anything, but usually it comes...
Is there a flag for it? Is there like a special color of shoes that they can wear?
But it mainly presents, because I do know someone who is a self-confessed like part of the incel community, and I used to work with them, and pretty much it happened slowly over time, right? They kind of started to getting hints that maybe they didn't have the most healthy relationship with women, right? Like the concept of women, things like you know, this idea of like women all being heartless and really like, you know, they're the cause of like misery, and they don't think like you and I, kind of thing. Like there was kind of those style of thoughts that came out, and then slowly over time he did kind of say that he identifies as like an incel, but he kind of conveyed it to me as if it's an empowering choice for him, that he understands most people are just seduced by the gravity of life and they're pushed down this white picket fence and whatever, but if they really stopped to think about the deal they were entering into, they wouldn't do it. Right, like they would choose like the logical answer based on the information that you have when you actually think about it, and not just get swept away in the emotion of it, is to be an incel, right? Is actually to reject that life because it's one of manipulation and misery and all this kind of stuff.
All right, sounds like our next guest.
Yeah, I should. He's probably married by now. Just kidding. But there's definitely something though that, like, because I don't think that the future is just like there's heaps of incels, but there's obviously a future where, due to a lot of pressures of society and the structures of society, economics, that people aren't choosing to have families. They're not choosing to be.
Is that a choice though? Isn't it the whole? Isn't like the key to the word incel that it's involuntary?
Well, it might have started off as that tag, but I think that they definitely see it as a choice. And if you start to engage with the mantra of incel culture, you're making that choice to never. Like that is a choice. That means that you are not going to. I don't think it's.
I actually don't think it's a choice. I think it's a reality that emerges. Like they come. I don't think the starting point. Okay, so this is my, like, what I perceive it to be. It's people who, for whatever reason, haven't been able to have any kind of connection with the opposite sex. In the case of usually men, with women. So they just haven't been able to have any, like, it just, nothing's worked for them. They've tried 50 different things that hasn't worked, and they have no success, and so they give up. And while they give up at the same time, they also sort of like start looking outside themselves to kind of blame why they're in that situation. That's the sense of what I get.
It's a protection thing too, right? But like it happens on both sides, right? Like if you can be someone who is highly promiscuous on one end, but never seek any meaningful connection because of a protection, self-protection mechanism. So it's the same thing. It's two sides of the same coin. It's just the behavior is different. The strategy of protection is different. But all I'm saying is if you keep on engaging in that, that's a choice. And that's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy that you're never going to connect with someone, right?
Yeah, but there'll be like some fetish that, like, of girls that actually like really into incels, so surely.
Yeah, if you just cash at me this, I'll definitely be into you. but But it's a choice thing. Like that, like with kids and stuff, doesn't that kind of weigh on your mind? Like if that model changes.
Can you imagine if there's like a whole thing of like, I'm going to turn the incel. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, it's like a virgin hunter. It's just like it's like I want to turn the gay people straight, and it's a challenge for me. It's like a sports mentality.
I'm going to make you. Yeah. All right. Well, have a good night, and see you next week.